I never thought my wife's nosiness would lead to such a nightmare. Now 3 lives are gone because of her. I, 57 male, have been married to my beautiful wife Charlotte, 55 female, for 32 years up until her passing. She was and still is to me the most charming, beautiful, charismatic woman to have ever graced this planet. She was the light of my world and the epitome of a graceful woman. Her only flaw, she was a bit nosy. Throughout our marriage, I would joke to her sometimes you have to mind your own business. It's cheaper that way, not realizing that someday it would ultimately end up being a fatal flaw. There wasn't anything or any information within our neighborhood that my wife didn't know about. Almost every night after I came home from work, she would have something to tell me. Charlotte was a stay-at-home mom since the day she gave birth to our 3 kids. Next door to us, a new home was being constructed and was nearing completion. King, 40 male, and Nina, 32 female, moved in prior to construction being completed, with some of the workers frequenting the property as time winded down. According to my wife, King and Nina were involved in an extramarital affair, cheating on their spouses with each other, and in the end they had divorced their spouses to be together. Our island is pretty small, so it is a common thing to know what is happening with who and what the talk of the town is, but I prefer to mind my business. King worked night shifts and Nina was also a stay-at-home, which resulted in Charlotte interacting with him a lot. King would always say that my wife was the mother he never had. My wife grew to love King as her own, but she was never too fond of Nina. She would always make comments saying something was off about Nina. I looked past it. I interacted with him occasionally, but nothing substantial. A few months went by and construction was completed on the house next door. They really did a beautiful job. Charlotte would comment to me almost every night that one of the contractors would still frequent the house even though construction was completed, but only at night when King had left for work. I told her it wasn't my business or hers to worry about. About a month went by and she brought it up again. This time she asked if she should tell King. I told her no. We got into a huge argument about it. She called our kids, they told her no. My daughter in particularly told her mom, just leave them alone. The next morning before I left for work I specifically told Charlotte to not do anything stupid. What does Charlotte do? Something incredibly stupid. As humans we observe things subconsciously, and it isn't until you sit down and piece things together that you notice just how much you observe. I came home from work and as usual King's car was gone, which meant he was to work. Later that night I took the trash out, and noticed King's vehicle was back, but this time it was parked behind George's vehicle. I also heard muffled noises, but it wasn't loud because our homes in the neighborhood have hurricane impact resistant windows, which is basically a sealant. Those windows make it hard to hear anything from the inside and outside. I went back inside and jokingly said to my wife, "Guess he must have found out." She looked at me and said maybe so. The next morning neither Nina or King came out to hail my wife, and George's car was still in the driveway. The night came, and still the same thing. King's car didn't move and George's car was still blocked in. The next morning Charlotte told me she would go next door to check on King and Nina. I said okay and left for work. Once again my wife, being the nosy person she is, knocked on the door and didn't get a reply. She walked around the yard and knocked on their sliding door. She didn't get a reply. My wife called me and asked if she should get a welfare check done. I told her no. Some hours go by and my wife called me again, and asked again if she should get a welfare check done because something doesn't feel right. I asked her why does she care so much. That is when she admitted to me that she had texted King while he was at work 2 nights ago saying, "I thought construction was done at your home, why is the contractor back? He only works at night." It felt like a train had ran over me because I knew right there and then everything I had observed for the last few nights and days were starting to add up. The only thing I could say to my wife was call the police. I sped home. I worked about 15 minutes from my home and I could swear to you I made it back in 3. The police came and taped off our entire street. Nina and George had passed away, decapitated. King came out of the house shouting, "I unalived Nina." Nina broke my heart. According to the news report and interrogation of King, he said he walked into the house and caught Nina and George making love and snapped. He then did horrendous things to them. For 2 nights he slept next to Nina's torso. Our son, who works crime scenes and also worked this case, said that parts of them were found just about everywhere throughout the house. The crime scene photos were leaked, no one knows by who, but they were horrific. It showed everything. King wrote on the wall, "Cheaters must die." On George's stomach, he wrote Cheater 1, and on Nina's stomach he wrote Cheater 2 with markers. My wife caused all of this. The timestamp on our security camera showed that King arrived back home at 8:07 p.m. about 11 minutes after my wife sent him that text. I shouted at my wife some things I regret to this day. When I saw the body bags I pointed at them and shouted to her, "You see what you caused, you are the reason why this happened." I hate myself for doing that. My wife went into a deep depression the days after. She wasn't eating, sleeping, talking, bathing. My wife sat in a catatonic state. 8 days after everything, my wife passed away from a heart attack. I live with hate for myself every day for placing the blame on her. The truth is her actions resulted in the death of 3 people including herself. My wife couldn't hurt a fly. I just wish she had listened. The family of George and Nina made threats against my wife, me, and my kids. They also blamed us. Some of the other neighbors were happy to hear of my wife's passing. Mentally I struggled with the aftermath. I couldn't go to work. It was hard. I've been in therapy for a while now. A part of my assignment is to write my thoughts out, make notes about how I feel and what I was thinking. The only people who know the extent of this story are my kids and therapist. Thanks for letting me vent. Bye for now. Note, because this case is on Google, with the leaked images of the crime scene and also to protect the little bit of privacy and sanity my family still has, I changed the names of all parties involved, and I avoided mentioning dates.